Yeah, I mean, obviously the themes of both movies are different, but you can see all the numerous references that they make to Dark Knight. Like, even starting with, like, off with Bond himself, the fact that, you know, he can do pretty much anything. He can come back from the dead despite suffering horrific injury.
At least it's not, and I will say this, at least it's not in Die Another Day where, like, he forced himself to stop his own heartbeat and then revive himself back again, almost like superhero status.
God damn you, James Bond.
I know. At least
you're Batman.
At least he didn't do that. At least he didn't do that. I mean, here he just got shot and he just got beaten up. That's a little bit. I mean, yeah, that doesn't explain much, but at least it's not that.
At least he didn't take chain balls to the testicles this time.
Yeah, there wasn't really any torture scenes with Bond. Then again, there didn't need to be. There really didn't.
But yeah, you have that with Bond, and then like I said with the villain, you know, he's a crazy motherfucker who doesn't have a direct hand in the killings that he performs. He is really like integral in.
Intricate.
He's really intricate in terms of like the technology he uses for his plans. He has like I said, numerous henchmen who do whatever he says, and then of course that one scene in the middle where you know. They go through this whole big elaborate... Bond goes through this whole elaborate thing in order to, like, finally find out who he is and then capture him. And then they did that, and then you see him in the sun. I'm like, wait a minute, I've seen this before. And then sure enough, they show that he somehow hacks their system without even touching a computer, and that causes him to escape. And I'm like, okay, this is definitely Dark Knight.
Yeah.
And apparently he had planned this for years.
I didn't want to say anything, but yeah.
I'm sorry, but like, how could he have planned that for years? I mean, was he really expecting like you gotta like really think about it. There's a lot of variables that went into that plan actually being, you know, going without actually going off without a hitch. I mean, he had to take into account that Bond would get hurt and then would, you know, become a broken down man and would have to go out of his way to prove himself. And
I don't think it didn't matter if it was Bond or not. It was the fact that whether somebody from MI6 would just send someone. I don't think he was expecting Bond. He just happens to know who Bond is because I mean he can hack into MI6 anytime he wants. He can look up any agent. In fact, he revealed, you know, some of the agents on the when he did that YouTube video thing.
But he must have been expecting Bond, though, because, I mean, what was it? It was 3 months he disappeared after being shot, and apparently no other agent came close to actually finding out, you know, who the guy was. I mean, really? They had no other agents? I mean, did they all die on that one explosion, or they just didn't have anybody?
Well, some of the agents do. Anytime that any of the James Bond stuff, whether it's movies or video games or whatever, they mention other agents, usually they end up being dead. They usually die because they're not James Bond. But anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, like, he went through a lot. He had to track down his the guy who shot him, and it's just lucky he still had the shrapnel, and lucky that they happen to have on file that this guy happens to own this gun, even though he's supposed to be a ghost. I mean, you think his name, if he's a ghost, his name wouldn't be on record for having, you know, that gun. Or at least it'd be under a different alias. But, yeah, he figures out the whole big key is that shrapnel, and then he tracks the guy, but he kills him before he can even find out who the boss is. But thank God he had that poker chip, you know, where the guy went...
And happens to meets that one lady, which leads to...
And thank God she happened to hate her employer and was willing to bring Bond along to kill him.
I know, at first I thought, like, oh, she's going to try to kill him, and, like, no. But then Bond says something about, you know, knowing who she is from, like, from her mannerisms, and I'm just, in her body language, and I'm just like, I actually like that approach, instead of this whole, because and that is another thing I actually liked about Bond here, is that Bond looks at, like, he proves, like he gives like proof as to like why he knows some of this stuff, instead of just random stuff just pulling out of his ass like every other Bond movie. It's like, oh, I just happen to know this and I just happen to know that. It's like I happen to know the different license plates, like in GoldenEye, and just random tidbits that he just happened to pick up along the way on his travels. And here, at least it's a little bit more credible. That's just one other aspect I like about it. But I want to steer over to another character who also has a big major role, and that's M. Because this really is also an M movie, if you really think about it.
This kind of is her story, like sort of her last stand when you think about it.
Yeah, and I was kind of sad, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because it's amazing how much the character of M has changed since Judi Dench became the new M in GoldenEye in 1996. Because before, M was played by a man named Bernard Hill. And Bernard Hill, there really wasn't much to him. I mean, he was, for lack of a better word, Basil Exposition. He was the guy who just basically gave out exposition, and then you don't see him for the rest of the movie. Tells Bond what he has to do, and then he goes off and, he's gone for the rest of the movie until the very end. He says, well done, Bond. Thank you for saving the world again. Blah blah blah.
Pretty much.
That's pretty much it. And then when Bond got revived in 1996, and they got M, the first Lady M, it was a big change. It was a breath of fresh air because not just because of her performance, but also the writers had a big part in this because they gave M more to do, made it more engaging, and Judi Dench took that role and played it with such conviction, with such sincerity, and it just it's like you believe that she is It made the role a little bit more believable instead of just bland. It's like, she actually really gives a crap about what's going on.
Judi Dench is amazing. You ever see her play Queen Elizabeth? Oh my god. You'd think she was a real thing.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. She's absolutely brilliant. She can also do comedy also. I saw her in a I've seen her in a Britcom that she was in the mid-90s. But apart from that, like, what she did, as M, and even in the video games, it also stays true as well. She did a phenomenal job, and to see her go, to really see her go, it's like really after all that, but also it's like, yeah, I mean, she's been doing this for like what 16 years?
Yeah, like I think she's been M for the last 6 movies.
Yeah, from GoldenEye up to now. Mm-hmm. It's so sad, but they got somebody to replace him with, and the guy does.
Lord Voldemort. No, I'm not kidding. Ralph Fiennes is the new M.
He's going to be the new M. They made it clear, but I don't know. That one, I don't know, he could work, but the only time
they showed him being pretty badass and willing to sort of lax the rules a bit in order to accomplish their end.
He does have that mini arc in the movie. Like, he starts off as doesn't want anything to do with them. He's like I'm taking you over, blah 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 blah. It's like, no, you have to do this, but eventually he's very by the book, and at the end he realized that he can bend the rules a little bit, that kind of thing. Yeah. But time will tell to see, what they're going to do with them in future films.
Yeah, I say I will miss Judi Dench though, and she really does have a big arc in this though, because it's not just that the story of Bond and how he might be getting too old for his profession. It's also M and how she's getting too old for her profession, because you actually see this at the very beginning when she's the one who makes the call for the female agent to try to shoot the assassin Bond is trying to take down, and ends up shooting Bond instead. I mean, that was entirely her call, and personally, I didn't agree with that because, I mean, she really should have trusted Bond to finish the job, or at least hang on to the guy long enough where they could at least tell where he was going. But then he gets shot, and then they completely lose it, and bad shit starts happening 3 months later. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you do see that M is starting to lose a bit of her nerve, and that in a way, you can kind of see the sort of fear she has of being replaced, at least before, the job is done. And you actually really, get a feel for her relationship with Bond. Because I think when she started off, she kind of, like, hated Bond because he was kind of a misogynistic asshole.
The one line that comes to mind is from GoldenEye. She just goes up to me and goes, I don't like you at all. I think you're a sexist dinosaur. Which can be said from the earlier Bond movies, especially the Sean Connery stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But she goes from hating Bond, but over time, especially when we get into Tomorrow Never Dies and The World Is Not Enough, she starts to like Bond. She starts to accept what she does. In fact, it's not the first time M is always her life is in danger, and World Is Not Enough. She gets captured by the main villain, and Bond ends up rescuing her, and and all things are good, and blah blah blah. So
yeah, in this one though, they show that they kind of developed a sort of mother-son relationship over the years, because like she actually in truth she does lie to him a lot, either for his own protection or just to sort of like give him that push in order to really do his best on something. But you see that she does have a sort of sentimentality for him, and even though she never verbally says that I do care about you or I feel bad for what I did to you or anything, you could tell that she does care about him.
You do see that a lot more with her and Daniel Craig as opposed to with her and Brosnan. I think it was heading more in that direction near the end, with World Is Not Enough and even in Die Another Day, where she becomes a little more sympathetic, a little more sympathetic with Bond. But here with Daniel Craig, it's the connection between the two, and even in Casino Royale, they starts off with whether or not M can trust Bond, especially in Casino Royale in the beginning when he's supposedly starting off, because it was a reboot, and then later, in Quantum of Solace, she kind of helps him out somewhat, saying, not to let your emotions play out, and that kind of goes with that throughout the entirety of that movie. And then finally with Skyfall, it's more, they need each other's help, and they really need to, and worrying about each other, and how they're being a little bit old fashioned. And I love the bit when Bond is supposedly kidnapping M and takes her over into the older Bond car. Does make me wonder a little bit about the continuity of the reboot, because that was from let's see, the ejector seat. I think that was from Goldfinger, I believe. Yeah, I think that was from Goldfinger, the Goldfinger car with the ejector seat. It's go ahead, shoot me out of the car with the ejector seat.
See if I care.
You see if I. Just them kind of playing off of each other, and the whole scene with them being at the Skyfall estate, because apparently that's what the name of the movie is. And
I really love the banter between those two. You see the subtle ways that they like to insult each other, and it's just so funny.
Yes. And that's another thing about this movie, is that they do throw back in the one-liners from the the previous Bond movies, how Bond always has that one-liner, that final say on everything. But the way the writers did that here is that it plays off a lot more subtle. It's a lot more subtle with it, and it just flows. It just fits. Mm-hmm. Especially with the way Daniel Craig delivers it. When he has to blow up the house, he looks over, it's I never liked this house, and just walks off. And but it plays off. Yeah, it's a one-liner, but it plays off just very subtle, and that's what actually makes it more funny, is that it's subtle.
I like how M sort of got the last word or the last joke on Bond, because she always had this little ceramic bulldog as her desk decoration, yes. Which he always would scoff at.
Always made fun of.
And then when after she dies and her will is read off, she actually left him that. And I'm oh, she phoned you from beyond the grave.